The foundation of influence is not goodwill, generosity, or even merit. It is scarcity. That which is seen less, desired more. That which is encountered often, grows dull. This is not a matter of opinion, but of immutable human behavior. The mind does not long for what it has in abundance. It craves what it cannot grasp. Therefore, to be powerful, one must learn to deny, not only others but oneself. Deny the impulse to always be present. Deny the temptation to please. Deny the desire to be liked. You must become rare, and in doing so, you will become essential. Availability is the death of mystique. It is the eager servant's smile, the constant messenger's knock, the familiar hand always raised in greeting. These things are welcomed, yes, but never feared, never admired. The man who offers himself too freely is treated as a tool, not a prize. He becomes part of the furniture in the room, useful perhaps, but easily replaced. Observe how the truly powerful operate. Kings, even when idle, are not accessible. Their time is filtered, their presence limited. They are not governed by others' needs. Others are governed by theirs. This is not arrogance. It is discipline, and it is deliberate. The principle of scarcity extends beyond people to objects, ideas, and even emotions. A rare gem commands attention not for its utility, but for its rarity. A whispered rumor travels faster than a public speech. A withheld smile seduces more than a flood of compliments. Likewise, the person who appears only when necessary, whose approval is difficult to obtain, whose time is not easily bought, gains the aura of significance. Their absence becomes a message, their silence an event. Others interpret, analyze, speculate. The less they give, the more others want. Those who seek validation through constant interaction are, whether they know it or not, begging to be devalued. Each message sent, each door opened too freely, each favor granted without resistance. All of these are withdrawals from an account of respect that dwindles with overuse. Human psychology is wired to equate scarcity with value. The fruit out of reach appears sweeter. The voice that is seldom heard is listened to more attentively. The strategist must therefore weaponize scarcity, not as a passive trait, but as a deliberate tactic. There is a cruel truth buried in the nature of human relationships. The more accessible you are, the less important you appear. And so, to maintain dominance in any field, social, political, romantic, one must be seen less, not more. One must act with calculated restraint. Appear not where expected, speak not when summoned, give not when demanded. In this withholding, a new kind of presence is born, one that looms larger in absence than in flesh. You become less a person and more a concept, and concepts, unlike men, do not age, tire, or bleed. To become scarce is not to vanish. It is to become selective. Appear only where the effect is amplified. Speak only when silence would otherwise reign. Give only when the cost is felt and the gift cannot be ignored. This elevates your every move. Even mediocrity, when rare, is mistaken for brilliance. Meanwhile, excellence, if constant, is taken for granted. Thus, power does not reward the tireless giver. It rewards the precise denier. Consider the courtier who lingers at every gathering, laughs at every joke, interjects in every conversation. His face is familiar, his voice ever present, his relevance fading by the hour. Now consider the rival who appears once a month, says little, listens more, and departs before the crowd swells. Who is remembered? Who is discussed in their absence? Who is speculated about behind closed doors? Not the constant fool, but the scarce shadow. Invisibility, when controlled, is seductive. When forced upon others, it becomes torment. In times of war, generals do not unleash their full force at once. They withhold, reserve, delay. In politics, the silent vote carries weight. In negotiation, the pause speaks louder than argument. Scarcity sharpens the edges of every interaction. It ensures that your presence is not assumed, but earned. It allows you to dictate terms without saying a word. In this lies real power, not in abundance, but in careful restriction. Not in proximity, but in deliberate distance. The art of control lies not in overwhelming presence, but in selective absence. Where there is constant proximity, desire withers. Where there is distance, longing festers. The human mind is a furnace of projections. When you are not there to contradict their illusions, people invent reasons to need you, to remember you, to want you. This is not sentiment. It is leverage. It is the manipulation of perception, the calculated use of space and time to increase one's value without ever lifting a finger. People do not crave what they already possess. They crave what they suspect they cannot keep. And when one removes oneself from constant availability, when one withdraws physically, emotionally, socially, a strange transformation occurs. Absence begins to echo louder than any presence ever could. The desire to understand you is born not in the details you reveal, but in those you withhold. When you step back, you are no longer just a participant. You become a puzzle. Mystery, by its very nature, seduces. A person who is always there, always answering, always showing up, always giving, becomes invisible over time. Their value depreciates like coinage in circulation. But the one who steps away at the height of attention, who remains silent when spoken of, who allows rumors to precede clarifications, that person becomes larger than life. When you are not there, others are forced to imagine you. And imagination, unlike memory, embellishes, it idealizes. It creates versions of you far more powerful than reality permits. Absence does not mean disengagement, it means strategic withdrawal. It is not a lack of power, but an assertion of it. The sovereign does not roam the marketplace. He is rarely seen, his appearance is calculated, his distance a reminder of his supremacy. The same principle applies to any person wishing to command attention without chasing it. By removing yourself, you create a void, and human nature abhors a vacuum. The mind rushes to fill what is missing. You, once present and familiar, become a question mark, and that question burns more deeply than any answer. Distance is not passive. It is an act of war waged on the comfort of others. When you are near, others relax. When you depart, they begin to stir, they wonder, they reach, they feel the imbalance, and in seeking to restore equilibrium, they come to you, not out of generosity or curiosity, but out of a growing dependence on what you no longer provide. Your absence becomes hunger, your silence becomes noise, and your deliberate distance becomes an unspoken demand. Earn my return. Relationships, alliances, even enmities grow stale with overexposure. Familiarity breeds contempt, not because people are wicked, but because they are ungrateful. The more they see you, the less they regard you. They cease to wonder, they cease to work, they expect. And when expectation sets in, respect collapses. The act of becoming distant disrupts this cycle. It resets the balance. It forces others to evaluate your worth not based on what they have seen, but on what they have lost. Desire, like fire, requires oxygen. Too much closeness smothers it. When one constantly attends to others, in conversation, affection, loyalty, or service, the natural tension that sustains interest begins to dissolve. But create a gap, even a small one, and attention sharpens. Affection intensifies. People will chase not because you command them, but because you confuse them. They will seek not out of love, but out of obsession to resolve what your distance has complicated. This is why those who leave at the right moment are remembered longer than those who stay too late. This is why disappearing at your peak is a form of eternal preservation. The distance between yourself and others should be measured like a blade's edge. Close enough to threaten, far enough to be unreachable. Your nearness should never be a given, but a privilege that must be maintained. When people feel they might lose you, they behave differently. They speak with care. They act with purpose. Their words soften, their pride recedes, their attention intensifies. You become the gravity that holds their orbit, even as you drift farther from their reach. When you are distant, you force others to walk toward you. They bend, they reach, and in that act, they reveal themselves. You see who is loyal and who is lazy, who is dependent and who is indifferent. Your absence becomes a test they didn't know they were taking. Most will fail. A few will endure, but all will be altered. And in their altered state, you will discover your true position in their hierarchy of need. Distance is a mirror. It shows you how others see you when you are not performing for their benefit. It strips away convenience, tests devotion, and amplifies your silhouette against the dull background of daily interactions. The farther you stand, the clearer you appear. The one who appears to care less always holds the power. This is not conjecture, but a truth forged in the crucible of human interaction. Where emotion is exposed, weakness is drawn out. Where indifference is displayed, control is seized. The balance of power in any relationship, whether personal, political, or transactional, tilts toward the party that exhibits the least visible investment. It is not love, loyalty, or sincerity that governs outcomes, but detachment. Indifference, when artfully employed, bends the will of others without confrontation, without noise, and without risk. It is the invisible chain that binds the eager to the aloof. The one who remains emotionally uninvested holds the terms. The other, desperate to provoke a response, sacrifices position, dignity, and logic in the name of relevance. This is why it is not passion that wins negotiation, but poise. It is not enthusiasm that dictates outcomes, but restraint. The cold-blooded strategist observes others from a distance, calculates their needs, then controls the tempo of interaction by refusing to react. He does not chase, he waits. He does not beg, he chooses. This posture, not of arrogance, but of self-mastery, makes him an object of frustration, fascination, and ultimately, submission. People are governed by emotion. Most seek validation. They crave affirmation, attention, connection. The indifferent man denies these things not through cruelty, but through silence. And silence in a world starved of attention becomes a roar. The one who appears unaffected by praise or criticism, by affection or rejection, forces others to question their own significance. Why does he not respond? They wonder. Why does he not pursue what everyone else so obviously wants? In that question, power shifts. The indifferent becomes the standard. The invested become the pursuers. Indifference does not mean apathy. It is not a lack of understanding, but a refusal to display vulnerability. It is a strategy, not an emotion. The indifferent person may care deeply, but he never reveals when, where, or how. To express need is to relinquish advantage. To plead is to be beneath. Therefore, the mask of indifference is worn not to deceive, but to dominate. It becomes a kind of armor, not to protect from harm, but to provoke movement in others without ever moving oneself. There is a reason the indifferent are often accused of being heartless, cruel, cold. These are the cries of the dependent, not the criticisms of the wise. To those who require constant reassurance, the absence of attention feels like a form of violence. But it is not violence, it is leverage. The indifferent man does not strike, he withdraws. He removes the warmth others depend on, and in that void, they begin to unravel. The warmth becomes precious only in its absence. That which was once taken for granted becomes sacred. And the source of that warmth, now distant, aloof, silent, becomes the object of obsession. The masses confuse noise with strength. They speak too much, reveal too soon, feel too loudly. In doing so, they make themselves readable, predictable, and therefore controllable. The strategist, however, says little. He reveals nothing unless it serves a purpose. His silence is not absence, but calculation. His indifference is not disdain, but design. He has learned that those who care loudly are maneuvered easily, while those who appear to care not at all are feared. It is not cruelty that causes fear. It is unreadability. And there is nothing more unreadable than a man whose emotions you cannot provoke. In every interaction, someone wants more attention, more affection, more validation. The indifferent individual becomes the gatekeeper of those desires. His presence becomes a reward, not a constant. His words become currency, not chatter. Others lean forward to hear him while he leans back and listens. He says less because he can afford to. He waits longer because he is not pressed by desperation. He offers less because what he offers is now coveted. In this asymmetry, control solidifies. The indifferent man is not governed by outcomes. He does not chase closure, applause, or recognition. He understands that control is not about victory in a single moment, but the slow erosion of others' defenses. By caring less, or appearing to, he lets others deplete themselves in emotional labor while he remains untouched. They reveal themselves, they expose need, they try harder, speak more, and in doing so, relinquish the very dominance they believe they are seeking. His silence forces them to speak. His distance compels them to act. His restraint becomes their obsession. This posture must be sustained with discipline. The urge to explain, to correct, to justify. All of it must be strangled. Explanation implies obligation. Reaction reveals investment. The strategist does not flinch. He watches. He waits. He allows others to fill the space he leaves, and in doing so, they construct their own dependence. Indifference, then, is not the absence of care. It is the presence of control through calculated non-engagement. Influence does not arise from giving freely, but from restraining the hand that others expect to feed them. To withhold is not to deprive. It is to dominate. Power lies not in abundance, but in access, and he who controls access controls outcomes. When you become difficult to reach, hard to read, impossible to predict, you transcend the role of a participant and assume the position of a gatekeeper. Your presence becomes conditional. Your time becomes currency. Your words, your favors, your attention, all become instruments of control. Those who once treated you as common now wait upon your signal, because they no longer possess your consistency. Withholding is the architect of dependence. People only value what they must work to obtain. When you make yourself too available, emotionally, physically, professionally, you become a resource, and all resources taken for granted are used rather than respected. But when you withdraw, when you limit what once flowed without resistance, others are forced to evaluate the cost of your absence. They realize the weight of what they consumed so casually. This revaluation is not an accident. It is the precise outcome of strategic withholding. You offer less, and they give more in return. The psychology of influence depends on scarcity. The moment something is no longer easily acquired, the mind inflates its worth. The same is true of human interaction. Give too much, and you exhaust yourself for people who never asked you to stop. They do not feel guilt. They feel entitlement. But when you stop giving, when you begin to reserve yourself, they feel the shift not as neutrality but as punishment. They do not say, "Is quiet." They say, "Why has he stopped?" And in that question, you regain control. They begin to seek, they adjust, they inquire. And with every reaction they offer, they give away their position while you remain unmoved. The effective manipulator does not bribe with generosity. He controls with denial. He gives just enough to awaken need, but never enough to satisfy it. This incomplete gratification becomes addictive. The subject chases what he almost had, what he once tasted. By always offering less than what is desired, you sustain the appetite. You maintain their attention. You guide their behavior. To give everything is to end the game, but to give partially, to withhold strategically, is to keep the game in motion indefinitely. You are not simply a person. You become a riddle. You become a reward they haven't yet won. The most skilled leaders, seducers, and rulers do not exert force. They ration access. They make themselves the prize, not the pursuer. Their interest is conditional. Their time is reserved. Their approval is selective. This teaches others to regard their favor as valuable, not assumed. And when favor is seen as valuable, it is no longer questioned. It is chased. The moment you begin to withhold what you once gave freely, others are forced to confront their own dependency. They are forced to adjust their tone, their strategy, their very behavior, all to regain what they once took without gratitude. This principle extends beyond the personal. In politics, in warfare, in commerce, he who limits what others need holds the power to shape decisions without issuing commands. A supplier who controls the flow of essential goods bends nations to his will. A commander who withholds reinforcements forces enemies to expose weaknesses. A strategist who pauses before responding destabilizes his opponent's confidence. The same mechanism applies in every arena. Withholding is a provocation. It sparks anxiety, uncertainty, desperation, the very states in which others become manipulable. To give is to imply that one seeks favor. To withhold is to imply that one possesses it already. When you withhold, you declare that you are already whole, already sufficient, already strong, and that those who desire your presence, your service, or your attention must present something of value in return. This dynamic reverses the roles. You are no longer the seeker, you are the sought. And in this inversion lies the true heart of influence. People chase what steps away. They idolize what stays silent. They serve what they cannot predict. The error of the weak is to believe that love, loyalty, and attention are earned through sacrifice alone. They overextend, over-explain, over-deliver, and in return, they receive less, not more. Their gifts become expected, their presence becomes unnoticed. Their sacrifice becomes a debt owed by no one. The one who withholds understands that giving is only powerful when it is rare, when it is precise, when it is conditional. He understands that others must be made to feel the cost of his absence before they will ever appreciate the weight of his presence. To withhold is not to punish, it is to educate. It is to reveal the imbalance in a relationship. It is to allow others the opportunity to step forward, to prove themselves, to earn what was once handed to them without effort. And once they begin to prove themselves, once they begin to invest, you decide whether they are worthy of reward. This decision belongs to you and you alone, for you have made yourself the dispenser of value, and the dispenser of value never pleads. He withholds, and by doing so, he rules. In a world intoxicated by noise, silence is an anomaly, and what is rare becomes powerful. He who speaks less is not merely quiet, he is calculated. He is not absent, he is withholding. Words, when overused, lose their weight. The more a man explains, justifies, proclaims, the less authority his voice carries. But when he chooses silence, when he delays response, refrains from protest, and permits misunderstanding to linger, his silence becomes a spectacle. It forces attention. It breeds interpretation. It makes others do the work he refuses to do himself. The compulsion to fill space with noise is a weakness of the insecure. It is the hallmark of those who fear invisibility, those who mistake being seen for being respected. But the one who governs himself in silence, who does not react, does not flinch, does not clarify, commands a different kind of reverence. Not everyone will understand him. That is the point. In that confusion, he creates elevation. His silence is not passive. It is an active choice to withhold clarity, and therefore to force others into a state of mental tension. It is this tension, unresolved and persistent, that keeps him relevant in the minds of others long after he has left the room. The masses mistake verbosity for intelligence, emotion for sincerity, presence for significance. They confuse reaction with strength. But the man who truly understands power knows that silence terrifies more than threat. A loud man may startle, a silent one unsettles. The former demands attention and receives only momentary compliance. The latter disrupts without speaking, because he suggests that he sees more than he says, that he knows more than he reveals. And when others cannot decipher you, they begin to fear you, not because of what you've done, but because of what you might do. Silence opens the door to speculation, and speculation is a breeding ground for control. In conflict, silence destabilizes. When provoked, most lash out, defend, retaliate. This is expected. But the man who meets accusation with stillness, who allows others to speak themselves into weakness, shifts the power dynamic without force. His refusal to respond is not an absence of defense. It is a deliberate display of superiority. He does not lower himself into the chaos. He remains above it, untouchable, enigmatic. In doing so, he forces others to reveal their full hand while he reveals nothing. Silence, then, becomes both shield and sword. It protects while it threatens. In seduction, silence heightens tension. Constant affirmation bores. Constant praise dulls. But silence, strategically applied, creates craving, the unanswered message, the unreturned glance, the delay between signal and response. These are not missed opportunities. They are acts of control. Each moment of silence deepens the hunger. The target begins to imagine, to wonder, to fear that the connection is slipping. And in that fear, they become malleable. Silence forces them to pursue, to reach, to chase a response that may or may not come. And that pursuit places you above them. Even in leadership, silence is authority. A commander who waits before responding instills discipline without speaking. His words, when they arrive, are treated as law. A ruler who speaks seldom, but decisively ensures that his voice is never lost in the din. He understands that every word must carry weight, and weight is forged in the fires of restraint. The crowd will clamor, plead, demand. Let them. Their desperation only elevates the value of your eventual reply. By remaining silent, You expose their dependency on your voice. When you finally choose to speak, you do not inform, you command. Silence is also the tool of the observer. While others speak, the silent one listens. He watches body language, inconsistencies, desperation. He gathers intelligence while disarming others with his stillness. People underestimate silence. They interpret it as weakness, as ignorance, as hesitation. Let them. Their miscalculation becomes your advantage. Every word they speak becomes a data point. Every emotion they reveal becomes leverage. And all the while, your silence preserves your position. You show nothing, you lose nothing, you gain everything. To master silence is to master timing. It is not a matter of simply saying less. It is knowing exactly when to say nothing. When your silence interrupts a pattern, when it forces discomfort, when it turns an ordinary moment into a statement. Silence must be aimed like a weapon. Its edge is sharpest when others are most desperate for your voice. Do not squander it on routine conversation, on explanations that no one deserves. Let others fill the space. Let them run dry. Let them exhaust their arsenal while you remain unreadable, impenetrable. A man who does not rush to speak, who does not fear being misunderstood, is not lacking in expression. He is in possession of control. He knows that the need to explain is often the confession of weakness. He understands that those who cannot sit in silence are slaves to their own insecurity. But the one who can walk away without closure, who can endure the tension of unspoken thoughts, who can remain silent when others beg for reaction, that man is dangerous. He cannot be baited. He cannot be moved. And therefore, he cannot be beaten. Power does not belong to the loud, the generous, or the endlessly available. It belongs to the one who can withdraw, withhold, and remain unmoved. When you stop being available, the structure of every relationship begins to shift. You are no longer the responder, but the architect. You dictate the rhythm, not by doing more, but by doing less with precision. Your silence becomes a command. Your absence becomes presence. Your restraint becomes control. In every interaction, others begin to feel your influence not through your abundance, but through your deliberate scarcity. You are no longer defined by what you give, but by what you deny. This is the posture of the strategist, the ruler, the one who understands that in a world of constant noise and eager desperation, the most commanding figure is the one who steps back and watches others move around the space he no longer occupies.